Men need sex not just for pleasure, but for connection, affirmation, and emotional expression. It's how they feel loved, valued, and grounded. Sex becomes their language, one of peace, vulnerability, and identity. When we understand this, we stop judging and start building deeper, more meaningful relationships rooted in true intimacy. When we think about sex, we often reduce it to something purely physical, an act driven by desire, hormones, or momentary pleasure. But for many men, sex is far more than that. It is deeply emotional. It is a form of reassurance, a place of refuge, and a moment where they feel most seen and accepted. For men, sex can serve as emotional security, a silent yet powerful way of feeling safe in a world that constantly demands them to be strong, stoic, and emotionally invulnerable. In a society that doesn't always allow men to freely express their emotions, sex becomes a space where vulnerability is permitted. It's one of the few areas where they can let their guard down without fear of being judged. When a man engages in intimacy with someone he cares about, he's not just looking for pleasure, he's looking for comfort. He's seeking a moment where he can escape the pressures, expectations, and silent battles he fights every day. In those intimate moments, he's not the provider, the protector, or the problem solver. He's simply a human being craving warmth, connection, and closeness. Many women find emotional security through conversations, emotional support, or quality time. But for a lot of men, those same needs are fulfilled through physical intimacy. When a man is sexually connected to his partner, it tells him he's loved, he's wanted, and he matters. It's a silent affirmation that says, "You're good enough," without needing to say anything at all. That connection has the power to ease his insecurities, calm his fears, and strengthen his emotional resilience. Often, when men are denied intimacy in relationships, it's not just about rejection on a physical level. It can feel like emotional abandonment. It's not that they expect sex as a reward or entitlement. It's that sex is their way of bonding. It's their emotional glue. When that glue is missing, a man can feel emotionally disconnected, even if the relationship looks fine on the surface. This is why it's so important to look beyond the act itself and understand the emotional role it plays in a man's life. It's not about lust. It's about feeling close, accepted, and emotionally safe. When that intimacy is nurtured with understanding, trust, and mutual respect, it becomes one of the strongest forms of emotional connection in a relationship. Men may not always articulate their need for emotional security. They may not have the language or the confidence to express their inner world, but pay attention to how they show love, how they seek connection, and how they respond to touch and closeness. You'll begin to see that for many men, sex is not just about bodies coming together. It's about hearts finding a place to rest. For many men, affection is something they show through doing rather than saying. They may not always express their feelings with words, long conversations, or emotional vulnerability, but they reveal their love through actions, presence, and physical closeness. Sex, for a lot of men, becomes one of the few areas where they can express affection without needing to perform emotionally in ways that may feel unnatural or uncomfortable to them. It's not about putting on a show or meeting a specific standard. It's about being present, being accepted, and simply feeling close. In relationships, women often express affection through conversation, eye contact, and emotional exchange. They thrive on verbal reassurance, emotional validation, and thoughtful gestures. Men, on the other hand, are often conditioned to avoid emotional vulnerability. They are raised to be providers, protectors, problem solvers, roles that emphasize doing over feeling. This makes it difficult for some men to express affection in traditionally emotional ways. As a result, sex becomes the channel through which they pour love, connection, and closeness. It's not just about desire, it's about demonstrating affection in the language they're most comfortable with. For these men, sex is a moment where they don't have to say they care, they can show it. It's not about dominance or control, but about presence. It's about being there fully and letting go of the world for a moment. It is a way for them to give and receive love without the pressure of meeting emotional expectations that they might not fully understand or know how to fulfill. It's one of the only times they feel fully accepted, without being judged, questioned, or expected to act a certain way. And this is why sexual rejection can sometimes hit men harder than it appears. It's not just about being turned down, it's about feeling unwanted, unloved, and emotionally pushed away. The affection they were trying to offer was misunderstood as a demand rather than a need to connect. It can leave them feeling emotionally isolated, even in the closest of relationships. This is not to say that women must always be available, but rather to understand the deeper emotional message that often lies behind a man's desire for physical intimacy. In those quiet physical moments, men feel safe. They don't need to perform as the strong one, the tough one, or the one with all the answers. They don't need to prove themselves through words or emotional revelations. All they need is to be received as they are, imperfect, human, and emotionally complex. That simple, mutual connection through physical intimacy allows them to breathe, to soften, and to feel like they matter, not for what they do, but for who they are. When we begin to understand this, the entire narrative around sex and male affection changes. It's no longer about performance or expectation. It's about connection, simplicity, and love expressed through action. And sometimes, that's the most honest form of love they know how to give. Masculinity is often shaped by how men see themselves and how they believe the world sees them. From a young age, men are taught that their worth is tied to their strength, ability to provide, protect, and perform. They are encouraged to suppress emotion and rewarded for power, control, and success. But behind all of that conditioning lies a quiet need for validation, an unspoken desire to feel like they are enough. For many men, sex becomes a key part of that validation. It reinforces their sense of masculinity, reminding them that they are desired, capable, and significant. Unlike women, who are often celebrated for their emotional expression, men are praised for their achievements, decisiveness, and assertiveness. Emotional softness is rarely encouraged. This leaves many men unsure of where to place their vulnerability or how to process feelings of insecurity. As a result, sex becomes more than a physical act. It becomes a mirror that reflects their identity back to them. When they feel wanted sexually, they feel powerful. When they are embraced in intimacy, they feel seen, not just as men, but as worthy men. Being desired sexually confirms to a man that he is still attractive, still strong, still relevant. It's not about ego in a shallow sense. It's about reassurance. In a world that constantly pressures men to compete, to succeed, and to maintain control, sex offers a rare space where they don't have to prove anything. They can simply be, and in that space, they feel a return to themselves. A man who feels wanted sexually is a man who feels confident, capable, and grounded. It becomes emotional nourishment, not just physical fulfillment. When that sexual connection is missing or consistently denied, a man can begin to question his masculinity. He may wonder if he's no longer attractive, no longer appreciated, or no longer enough for his partner. This isn't about entitlement, it's about identity. The absence of sexual intimacy can lead to a silent erosion of self-esteem, especially if there are no other areas in the relationship where his value is regularly affirmed. This is why it's so important to understand that for many men, sex is tied to their emotional and psychological well-being. It reinforces not just their manhood, but their sense of belonging, connection, and value. It's not just about performance or desire, it's about validation. It's a reminder that they are still wanted, not because of what they can give or do, but simply because of who they are. The more we recognize this truth, the more we can shift away from the stereotype that men are always driven by lust. Instead, we begin to see sex as a deeper need, one that connects to self-worth, emotional security, and masculine identity. And when we honor that need with understanding and empathy, we create space for more open, intimate, and fulfilling relationships. In the fast-paced, high-pressure world many men live in, stress is a constant companion. They are often expected to be the problem solvers, the protectors, the providers, the ones who hold it all together when everything else is falling apart. This pressure can build up silently, accumulating over time without any healthy outlet for release. For many men, sex becomes one of the few places where they can truly let go. It's not just about physical gratification. It's a release valve for the emotional and mental weight they carry daily. During sex, the body experiences a powerful shift. Hormones like dopamine and oxytocin are released, which create feelings of pleasure, relaxation, and emotional connection. But even more than the chemical response, it's the mental reset that makes sexual intimacy such a vital source of stress relief. In that moment, a man can forget about deadlines, bills, expectations, or failures. His mind quiets, his body softens, he stops performing and starts feeling. That temporary escape from life's chaos allows him to return to the world clearer, calmer, and more centered. For men who don't often talk about their stress, who don't feel comfortable expressing anxiety or emotional overwhelm, sex becomes a silent form of healing. It's where the internal storm begins to settle. The closeness and acceptance found in intimacy give a sense of grounding. It's not always about the act itself. It's about being held, being wanted, and being in a space where nothing else matters. That stillness is rare in a man's world, and sex offers it without demand or explanation. This is why, after sex, many men feel more affectionate, relaxed, and emotionally available. It's not a contradiction, it's a reset. Their mind has been cleared, their emotional load lightened. It's easier for them to reconnect, to talk, or to simply be in the relationship in a more present way. Unfortunately, when this need is misunderstood or dismissed, it can create frustration and emotional distance. The man is not just asking for sex, he's reaching for peace in a world that rarely allows him to be still. Physical intimacy can also help regulate a man's sleep, improve mood, and even enhance his ability to focus. When he feels connected and sexually fulfilled, he's more confident, more composed, and better able to handle life's challenges. Without that release, tension builds, not just physically, but mentally. Resentment, frustration, and emotional disconnect can grow, often showing up in other areas of the relationship or in his overall mental health. Understanding sex as a form of stress relief and mental clarity allows us to see it not just as a want, but as a need, one tied deeply to a man's well-being. It's not about using sex as a distraction, but rather as a form of restoration. When shared with care, consent, and connection, it becomes one of the most powerful tools for helping a man feel balanced, grounded, and truly alive. Love is expressed in many ways, through words, gestures, time, and presence. While many women often express love verbally or through emotional support, many men tend to show love through action. Their way of saying, "I love you," doesn't always come wrapped in poetic language or emotional confessions. Instead, it shows up in what they do, how they show up, and how they physically connect. For a lot of men, sex becomes one of the most powerful and genuine ways to express love. It's their action, it's their language, it's how they reach out when words fail them. Men are not always raised or encouraged to explore emotional expression. Vulnerability is often mistaken for weakness. Because of this, many men grow into adulthood without the tools to articulate what they feel. They may love deeply, but not know how to say it. They may care immensely, but struggle to show it in traditionally emotional ways. So, they turn to what feels natural to them, action. And for many, the most intimate and meaningful action they know is physical connection. Through sex, they give love, share affection, and feel emotionally bonded. It's important to understand that when a man initiates intimacy, he may not just be seeking pleasure. He might be saying, I miss you, or I want to be close, or this is how I love. The act itself becomes an emotional offering, one that says, I trust you with me, without speaking a single word. When this expression is received with warmth, it deepens the bond. When it's misunderstood or rejected, it can feel like his love is being denied, even if that was never the intention. Sex, for many men, is a love language. It's not separate from their emotional world. It's a part of it. When they are physically connected to someone they care about, it fulfills an emotional need just as important as communication or quality time. It reassures them, grounds them, and affirms their place in the relationship. It's not about validation through conquest. It's about emotional closeness through action. It's not a demand. It's an offering of self. When we begin to see sex not just as a physical experience, but as a loving gesture, it transforms how we interpret a man's needs. We stop viewing it as a surface-level desire and start recognizing it as a heartfelt attempt to connect. In those moments of physical intimacy, many men feel safe enough to be soft. They feel accepted enough to be vulnerable. And they feel close enough to love without saying anything at all. This expression of love in action should be honored, not because men are simple or emotionally distant, but because this is often the most honest and comfortable way they know how to express what's in their heart. Understanding that opens the door to deeper connection, more empathy, and a kind of love that respects how both partners give and receive affection. Every human being wants to feel desired. It's a deep and universal need to feel attractive, valued, and wanted, not just for who we are, but for how we make others feel. For many men, this need is no different. In fact, due to societal conditioning, it's often even more pronounced and less acknowledged. Men are usually expected to be the pursuers, the initiators, the ones who chase and rarely receive. Over time, this dynamic can lead to an emotional imbalance where men constantly give without ever fully feeling desired in return. This is where sex plays a much deeper role. It becomes a way for men to feel affirmed in their desirability, not just physically, but emotionally. When a man feels sexually desired by his partner, it sends a powerful message. You still see me, you still want me, I matter. It reassures him that he is not invisible, not just tolerated, and not just useful. He is wanted for who he is. That kind of affirmation isn't rooted in ego or shallow validation. It's about emotional security. It's about knowing he's still attractive in your eyes, even in the routine of everyday life. When a man feels consistently undesired, it can chip away at his confidence and sense of self-worth, often without him even realizing it. Unlike women who often receive compliments, emotional support, and attention from multiple sources, friends, family, and even social media, men often lack those spaces. Most men don't get told they're handsome or appreciated or attractive regularly. For many, the only time they feel truly seen is during intimate moments. When that space disappears or feels one-sided, it leaves them emotionally hungry. They start to question their worth, their relevance, and even their place in the relationship. Sex becomes more than physical for this reason. It becomes proof. Not that he's performing well, but that he's still wanted, that his presence still excites his partner, that he hasn't faded into the background of her priorities. These subtle emotional messages often speak louder than words. The look in her eyes, the willingness to connect, the initiation of intimacy. These all signal to him that he's still enough, still desirable, still chosen. When this need for affirmation is misunderstood, it's easy to label men as needy, demanding, or overly focused on sex. But the reality is, their desire for intimacy often masks a deeper longing to be validated and cherished. They want to feel like more than just providers or protectors. They want to feel like lovers, like partners, like men who still inspire passion in the person they love. Understanding this side of masculinity creates space for a more compassionate and emotionally fulfilling relationship. It helps us see that behind the physical desire is a quiet hope to be reminded, you still want me, and that means everything. That kind of affirmation doesn't just boost his confidence, it strengthens the bond between two people and nurtures a deeper, more meaningful connection that goes far beyond the physical. For many men, words don't always come easily. Not because they don't feel deeply, but because they haven't always been taught how to express what they feel. From a young age, they're often told to toughen up, to be a man, and to hide anything that looks like emotional vulnerability. Over time, this conditioning creates a silent struggle, one where emotions live just beneath the surface, but have no clear outlet. This is where sex becomes so significant. It becomes a way to communicate what they cannot always say, a language without words. In moments of intimacy, a man can express love, connection, tenderness, and trust without needing to articulate it. His touch, his presence, his attention, all of it becomes a silent message. Through sex, he can show affection, ask for reassurance, and seek emotional connection in a way that feels safe and familiar. It's not about the act itself, it's about what the act represents. It's a pause in the noise of life, a space where he can be seen, accepted, and understood without having to explain himself. Many men use sex as a way to say, I miss you, I love you, or even, I'm hurting, without ever forming those words. Not because they don't want to communicate, but because emotional language feels foreign. In intimacy, they find a space where emotional barriers fall away. Their guard is lowered. They become open, not just physically, but emotionally too. It's in that vulnerability that they hope to be received, not judged. When women expect verbal communication to be the primary way of connecting emotionally, they may overlook how much a man is actually saying through his actions. And when sex is dismissed or declined repeatedly, the man might not just feel rejected physically, he may feel emotionally silenced, like his attempt to connect was misunderstood or pushed aside. That emotional misalignment can lead to frustration and distance in the relationship. This doesn't mean sex should be used as a substitute for healthy communication, but it's important to understand that, for many men, it is a form of communication, one that deserves respect and recognition. It's not always about satisfying a need, but about sharing a feeling, about reconnecting without the pressure of performing emotionally in ways they were never taught. When a man reaches for intimacy, he may be trying to bridge a gap between himself and his partner. In those quiet physical moments, he's expressing trust, loyalty, and desire. He's saying, I want to be close to you, even if he struggles to say those words aloud. And when his partner receives that message with empathy and understanding, it deepens the bond between them, building not just physical connection, but emotional closeness that transcends language. Sex becomes more than just an act. It becomes an emotional conversation, a silent, powerful exchange between two people. And for many men, it's the most honest and unfiltered expression of love they know how to give. Every relationship needs stability, something that keeps both partners grounded through the highs and lows of life. For many men, that stabilizing force often comes through physical intimacy. While it's easy to view sex as a purely physical desire, it actually serves a much deeper emotional purpose. In many relationships, sex becomes the emotional anchor for men, a quiet but powerful way to reconnect, rebuild, and recenter the relationship when life begins to pull it in different directions. Life can be overwhelming. Work pressures, financial responsibilities, family issues, and unspoken emotional burdens all take a toll. Men are often expected to bear much of that weight without complaint. They move through each day with a sense of duty, often hiding their own stress or emotional struggles, because that's what they've been taught to do. But within the intimacy of a trusted relationship, sex becomes a sacred space where they can release that pressure. It becomes the emotional reset, a moment of connection that helps them find balance and reassurance. When a relationship goes through conflict or emotional distance, men don't always know how to initiate healing through conversation. They may struggle to find the words or fear saying the wrong thing. So instead, they may reach for their partner physically, not to avoid the issue, but as a way to bridge the emotional gap. It's their way of saying, "I want to be close again," or "I don't know what to say, but I still care." When that gesture is misunderstood or rejected, it can feel like being pushed further away emotionally. Sex becomes the emotional anchor that holds the relationship steady. It's not about avoiding problems. It's about maintaining connection while facing them. When that connection is strong, communication becomes easier. Trust deepens. Emotional walls begin to fall, and the sense of safety and unity within the relationship grows. It's a cycle that feeds itself. Intimacy leads to emotional closeness, and emotional closeness leads to deeper intimacy. In long-term relationships especially, life can become so routine that partners begin to drift emotionally without realizing it. Responsibilities take over, and affection becomes less of a priority. For many men, this slow disconnection can feel confusing and lonely, but when physical intimacy is present and nurtured, it acts like glue, keeping both partners emotionally bonded, even when life gets chaotic. This doesn't mean sex is the only way to stay emotionally close, but it does mean it plays a far more important role than many people realize. It provides men with a sense of stability, of being wanted, of belonging. It reassures them that no matter what's happening outside the relationship, the emotional core remains intact. When sex is treated as a meaningful emotional experience rather than a transactional act, it transforms the way couples relate to each other. It becomes not just a moment of connection, but a foundation that holds everything else together. An emotional anchor that helps both partners weather the storms of life without drifting apart. When we take a closer look at why men need sex, we begin to understand that it's not just about physical satisfaction. It's about emotional connection, affirmation, and identity. For many men, sex is the language they use to express love, to seek comfort, and to feel truly seen in a world that rarely allows them to be vulnerable. It reinforces their masculinity, offers stress relief, affirms their desirability, and acts as a silent but powerful form of emotional communication. Most importantly, it anchors their relationships, grounding them in connection when life feels overwhelming. Understanding this truth doesn't mean ignoring our own needs. It means recognizing his, too. It's about bridging the emotional gap, creating space for deeper intimacy, and valuing sex as more than just a physical act. When we stop judging or misunderstanding a man's need for sex and instead see the heart behind it, we begin to build stronger, more compassionate, and emotionally fulfilling relationships. Because at the end of the day, love is not only what we say, it's what we do, how we connect, and how we choose to show up for each other.